Hey, everybody. I'm Lisa Campion, and we're going live today. And I'm live with my dear friend and colleague, Jane Bear. We've been talking up the quantum mystic stuff and what's it like to live in a quantum universe and all that beautiful sort of five-dimensional conversations we've been having. And today we wanted to talk about kind of a really cool topic, alchemy, but maybe not in the way that you think of alchemy. It's not about turning, you know, lead into gold, or maybe it's about turning our the base nature of us into the gold of spiritual realization, which I think is what alchemy is really about anyway. But I know that throughout history, spiritual seekers have discovered that there is gold in the pile of poo that sometimes life dishes us. So there's this, alchemy is the ability to transform life's greatest challenges into incredibly powerful catalysts for growth and awakening. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we transmute our pain into our power? So nice to be here with you again, Jane.
I know. Always so fun. These
Yeah.
these have been great, and this is a great topic.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is because, into into every life a little rain must fall, right? And I think a lot of us were just and I know I did when I was younger. I just felt sort of like victimized by it all, like, oh my God, this terrible thing happened to me and I just am stuck with it and I just have bad luck or whatever. Like took it really personally and then rolled around in the victim goo
Yeah.
um for a long time like this. And then something switched in me where I was like, maybe there is gold in the goo,
Mhm.
and really started that process, that deep alchemical process of using the challenges that we all experience in life as that catalyst for growth.
Yeah, it's funny because I think about, there's like the natural progression of being human. So when we're little, we think like, "Oh my God, life is happening to us and the universe hates me or whoever hates me." And I've heard my 13-year-old literally say that. And it's just and I can hear my 13-year-old self say that and thinking like we sort of need to feel that the opposite of the truth in order to remember the truth,
Yeah.
which is, yeah, life happens, pain happens. That's why we're here, for the polarity of it all, for the felt sense, for the feeling, and it takes walking the spiritual path, I think, to really be able to, yes, have those experiences, but also transform them and to understand that they're really all that pain is like a doorway or like a path towards our own awakening.
Yeah, or like an initiation, especially when we're talking about the really big doozy ones,
Yeah.
death, divorce, illness, like extreme poverty or changes in our circumstances. It's hard if like a tornado runs through your village and kills your house,
Yeah.
you know, to be like, oh, this is for my highest good,
Yeah.
you know? Um, and I think
Yeah.
there's kind of stages of this, like where they're kind of, it's like our pain is moving us into our purpose, which I think is sort of always the opportunity.
Yeah.
And some of them, the big, really whammy ones, are more like initiation moments that you think they're like, you're not the same person you are on the other
Absolutely.
end of that experience.
Absolutely. And trusting that there really is purpose in all of it, even though it's so hard. I mean, we've all been there to some degree. And 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 from the expanded point of view, we can't judge our experience or anybody else's experience because there's so much to there's like the karmic path. There's the soul's evolution. There's so much to it that we don't know. We don't know why things happen. But they
Mhm.
do. And so, yeah, I really agree. We can kind of do a step by step for that transmutation, for that alchemy to happen.
I think one of my heroes in this topic is Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's was what's the title of his book? I wanna say it's Man's Search for Meaning, but I think that was Carl Jung's book. But he wrote a book about this topic because he was a Holocaust survivor,
Yeah.
you know? And I don't know if it gets worse than that. Like that's kind of like it. And yet his point was, we can still use something even as horrible as that as a pathway to our own evolution. And when I think I'm having a bad day, sometimes I think about, like, I'm like, wow, that's really digging deep into the spiritual gold to
Yes.
to transmute that kind of experience.
Yes. Yes. And just all the spiritual teachings point to this. You think about the lotus and how they say the lotus grows in the mud. It's like
Mhm.
we really do um it we need that on this earthly plane in this material world we're here to experience it all. And I think sometimes it's easy to lose sight that actually that's what we're here for, is like the highs and the lows.
Oh, Willa's here. Hi, Willa. And she said I got it right. Viktor Frankl did write the book Man's Search for Meaning. Thanks,
Way to
Willa,
go.
for that. I was like pulling that out of my memory. And I think, Jane, like when I think about this, there's sort of like a kind of a continuum that I wanted to talk about. Like on one hand, where we just totally feel victimized and we can't see the gold. And then there's on the other side of the continuum, which is like spirit washing, like
Spiritual
spiritual
bypassing.
bypassing,
Yep.
like nothing bad happened. Like it's all for your highest good. Like what's the difference between actually doing the transmutation and just spirit washing it, bypass, spiritual bypass.
Yeah. Well, I think that like the process of this alchemy that we talk about, which we're all capable of, we've been given these physical forms in order to do this work, is like first acknowledgement, like feeling what is real, what is actually happening without numbing, without trying to escape the feelings. Um, because we have to feel it. We have to like be like, no, this is actually what's happening, as opposed
Mhm.
to, love and lighting our way around it.
Yeah.
And then, really witnessing, like observing what's happening without judgment. And that can be really hard because that, like, witnessing what's happening can bring up a lot of trauma or triggers or our past stuff that we haven't worked on yet. Um, so I think that those are really key to not spiritually bypassing. And, you know, I know in the mystery school, in our quantum mystic mystery school, there is no spiritual bypassing. No, 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 no. Because it's not the point, you know.
Mhm.
And then I think last part of just I think the process of this alchemizing that pain into purpose is like the integration. And those are sort of like, it's like reclaiming those lost parts of ourselves and really restoring balance. Um, I don't know. It's like the spiritual compost, or composting.
Yeah. I love spiritual compost. I love compost of any kind. I was thinking too in the mystery school that we're doing. We're heading into year 2. We're going to be doing a year 1 class, but we have a year 2 class, and that's the journey to the underworld. So I was thinking a lot about the hero's journey, and part of the stages of the hero's journey is traveling into the underworld, where you traveling into the subconscious, traveling into the compost, right?
Yeah,
To um to do, like, we can't really do the alchemizing unless we take that journey to the underworld. We go into the belly of the whale, you know?
yeah,
And there's no it's like leaning into it and actually
yeah,
feeling all the things. Maybe there's a dark night of the soul that's involved in alchemizing, where we really have to, like, we lose faith, we surrender to the grief, we feel like we can't survive, like, what is presented to us. And I think that's a process through. It's not like where you don't end in the nervous breakdown or the dark night of the soul, hopefully. We continue to feel all the feels to, let that do its work on us, to break us down into the compost, and then we're something different on the other side of it.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it makes that fertile soil so that we can grow into and bloom into our essence, who we truly are. But yeah, that going down into a lot of people call it shadow work. And really, when we do that work, um, we're we're noticing the signs. We're noticing like, okay, is it our shadow or a trigger or a trauma that's actually running the show? And acknowledging those, again, those parts of ourselves, um, so that we can acknowledge and witness and integrate. And so it's really, really important work. And ultimately, this is how we raise our consciousness. And we have, and that's why spiritual bypassing is such a disservice. It's an avoidance because um, there's no way to actually truly raise your consciousness by avoidance.
Yeah, it just sort of slows the process down, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah, or stops it. I get really interested in this topic too, in terms of how we feel our life purpose,
Mm-hmm.
because I think um, listen, as a psychic, the number one question that I get is, "What's my purpose? I don't know. I don't understand what my purpose. I don't know why I'm here."
Yeah.
I, of all the questions I get, that's one I get over and over again. Um, and I feel like there are pain that so this idea of pain to purpose is something that you hear a lot in the business coaching world. And I know I can see that sort of it's sort of like two sides of the same coin, or the double edge of the sword, where on one hand you have like a lot of you've had a lot of challenges, and my story is an easy enough example. Like for me, growing up really psychic in a time when it wasn't okay to talk about that was really, really painful and difficult and isolating. And I was just trying to stay out of a mental hospital. I was just trying to, pretend to be normal in public and figure out what the heck was going on. And, you know, in getting these full on psychic experiences in a time when that was not an okay conversation to have.
Yeah.
And it sucked so badly that it created, so that's the pain. It created a real drive in me, a real passion for me to help other people,
Mm-hmm.
not do it the hard way like I did. That's the purpose, and if I hadn't had that pain, I don't know if I would have that purpose. Like it's sort of that pain, I think, becomes sort of the rocket fuel for our mission, and can guide you towards what you're meant to do here.
100%. Yeah, it's such a good example. It's like the pain is your teacher, you know.
Yeah,
It's challenging us to grow and to um, you know, sort of break down our, not only our thoughts, but our patterns and what we're avoiding. And the pain can keep us stuck. And so we're learning how to to look at it and to lean into it so that the pain actually opens to the path of purpose, right?
totally. Yes. And Darcy, hi Darcy. Darcy's here. She's saying, can spiritual compost be considered something we've used and we're now ready to release, like the tree leaves on the forest floor in the fall? Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's like when we've turned over, like when we've dug through that and we have like come up with the nuggets, I feel like what's left can be released, can be let go when we sort of um take all of the gold out of it, out of the what's there. I think sometimes we can just let that go. What do you think, Jane?
Yeah, I think that that's right, Darcy. Is like, um, the compost is like, one, you think about, when we're doing shadow work. I mean, even just the imagery of going into the shadow, or going down into the subconscious, into the darkness, is like going down into the soil. And not all soil is going to grow something. Like, there is a lot of soil out there that's hard and dry and isn't like um the perfect what am I trying to say? The perfect
growth medium.
yes, for whatever it is that we're growing. Um, and so it's the work that we do under there. It's like the attention that we're giving it and the witnessing and the like sitting with the feelings that come up and all of that work. So the things that are ready to be released and releasing them creates the compost from like whatever the soil was before. Could have been dry and brittle, it could have been overwatered. There's so many different things. And so we're creating that compost. And then once the compost is like really dark and has the earthworms and is aerated and is so ready, then all the things can grow. That's when the lotus starts to bloom.
I love that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love that.
good
And I feel
question.
like, oh, and Christy's saying hi. Hi, beautiful queens. So nice to see you, Christy. Thanks for being here, honey. And um Darcy's saying the attention and witnessing of the work we do to attend to all the parts of ourselves makes the soil fertile. That's so helpful.
Yeah, soil fertile. Thank you. The fertile
Yeah.
is the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Oh,
Darcy.
thank you, Darcy. Alyssa says she had a victim experience 9 months ago and tumbled into faith as she's only ever spiritually bypassed her problem. So how do we navigate the shadow work and lack of faith and disconnection from self? Totally get that, Alyssa. Like it's really hard to feel that when we're in the bottom, like when we're kind of like boom, like we hit the bottom of the barrel and we're in that dark night of the soul. What do we do?
Yeah. Oof. I know. This is such a hard one because it's not hard actually. It's like you're in it. And so it's a major reframe, right? We realize that again, when we have the understanding that the pain, that victimhood that you're feeling, whatever the problem is the teacher, then we can start to shift how we approach the pain. And so, you know, I would say start just acknowledging what you're feeling. What am I feeling? What am I feeling? Not what did so and so or such and such do to me. What am I feeling? And start there. Um, and then once you navigate that shadow work, it's the more that you start okay acknowledging it and witnessing it and feeling it, you can then start to work on trust again. And faith and trust, I believe, go hand in hand. And we can start, that disconnection from yourself is avoidance of feeling. So when we're feeling in our body, we're actually feeling our feelings and the sensations that we're having, the breath and the pain and the sweating and the hunger and the cold and the whatever it is, then you're not in avoidance. We can start to build back our faith and our connection.
Oh, such a beautiful answer. I
You want
hope
to add to that?
somebody write that down. That was so amazing. I'm like, we need that one,
I think
that
it's
little
recorded.
nugget. That little nugget recorded. And I think like my experience with that, Alyssa, is like when I've been in those moments is feeling like really like shifting um my perspective sort of into sort of a day by day, like, what do I gotta do today? And not trying to solve problems. I don't think it's great to look for solutions. That never works for me, but it might be like really expressing rage. It might be really like going out into the woods and screaming or crying or wailing. Like there's some kind of like really deep cathartic release that can happen when we're in that state. And that may be that's where I think the opportunity is, in allowing us to touch into these deeper emotions that may be part of our karmic patterns or part of our lineage patterns or part of something else that also needs to, like, when we take the top off the box, what else is in the box and what can we unpack? And it may just be like months of wailing and raging in a positive way that doesn't hurt you or other people, um, to kind of let that all off. And then for me, like when that passes, then I feel like, and that sort of feels like the, um, the initiation moment. I feel like different on the other end of it, you know?
Mhm.
But I don't think there's any shortcutting that. It may just be like lying in your bed and crying for a while until you get it all out. And I also think that this is a really good time to ask for support, like get your healers, your therapists, your, spiritual teachers, all the comfort measures. When I'm in that state, I treat myself like I have the flu. So
Mm.
I like really like work on settling my nervous system, taking some rescue remedy, drinking the chamomile tea, like having somebody else's shoulder to cry on because it really sucks to do it alone. So I think if you can marshal your resources, and get supported, through that process, and also like there's sort of a line like I feel that's important here where we've all been victimized. We everyone has the victim archetype, first of all, and everyone's had crazy shit happen to them that
Yep.
truly does, you know, is a victim moment. Like we have been victimized. There's also a piece of not wanting to spirit wash or bypass that piece. Doesn't mean we have to stay there. It doesn't mean that we can't
Right.
allow ourselves to become empowered by that. So like as an archetype, the shadow side of the victim archetype is to feel powerless and full of rage and, like you can't do anything about it. But the light side of it is like this kind of empowerment where you're like, I'm never letting that happen to me again, or I'm owning my power so hard that I'm never going there again. And I think that's a really, we don't pretend we're not victimized because we are. And we don't stop there. We don't stop in the shadow side of that.
Right. And that's like the acknowledgement with honesty, you know? And I just want to also add a couple more tools, like, because I think that we can, with victimhood, we can almost fall into martyrdom. And so,
Mhm.
if you sometimes we'll cry and then we'll cry some more and then we'll cry some more and we'll just stay in the crying. And really, are we letting out our feelings, or are we sort of crying for our moms? Because it's like our child self who's just wanting somebody to come and save us, which we all feel and we all have been there, and is a
Yeah.
very, very honest and beautiful thing to want. But kind of noticing the difference, am I staying in the pool of despair? And if you are, what can shift that? Because we need to do something kind of abrupt. Whether it's, okay, can I start to breathe? Can I actually just, instead of crying, can I focus on my breath? And how does that feel? How does it feel to be fully in my body? Or do I need to move? Do I need to shake it out? Like put on some rage music and just go out and like weed the garden. Rage weeding, as a friend of mine calls it.
I love
Literally
that.
puts on rage music and weeds. You know, what can like kind of knock you out of it. And then I also wanted to say like journaling and asking yourself questions like, um to reframe a little bit what's happening. Like, what would happen if I stopped resisting this pain and being honest? Like, what would happen? Oh my god, I might actually have to take ownership of my actions. Or that's, and like maybe there's discomfort with coming out of the pain, you know um and then also another question, what truth, like what is trying to emerge from this experience? What is the gift here? What is the opportunity from this pain? Because every pain has opportunity. um it's that lesson where everything has a lesson. um and one more, like reframing, instead of why is this happening to me, what is this trying to show me?
Mhm.
you know and we might not be there yet, but we can get there. you know we can definitely get there.
I love those. I love those tools. Um, so this is asking what about feeling fear? How do you release fear without sitting in it and losing control? I think my answer for that is working directly with your nervous system and rebooting your nervous system because fear is like the fight or flight mechanism that we all have. and that comes into place beyond our conscious control. It just happens. Some shit happens and we go into fight or flight. And sometimes if you're in fight, that's where you're going to rage. But if you're in flight, you're going to feel fear. I think that the things to do to bring your nervous system out of fight or flight are where we stop feeling fear. And that might be like the 4-2-8 breathing pattern. Inhale 4, hold for 2, exhale for 8. Working on the vagus nerve, to release the vagus nerve, humming in the back of your throat, alternate nostril breathing. There's a lot you can look up things on how to um, you know get the vagus nerve to come back into regulation. So there's so many
Yeah, you can like
techniques for nervous system
massage it.
regulation that
Mhm.
that I think that's how you deal with the fear, and also like a mindfulness practice. So the mindfulness is like in this moment, I'm perfectly safe.
Yeah.
So fear is like, unless you're actually not, and that's a different story. But a lot of times when we've had something bad happen to us, we go into it's more anxiety. Fear is like a felt sense of danger in the moment. Anxiety is anticipated fear. So training ourselves to stay in the moment, like, uh, is there actual danger right now or not? And really calming down, like relaxing your tailbone, like all those things. Jane, what do you think about nervous system regulation?
Yeah, I think that all those things are so incredible. And Denise says, I hum and sway. I think that's great, like the
Mhm.
hmm or the
Yep,
toning. Um, Honestly, this is the hard truth. You you got to sit in it. If you are in an actually safe place, so allow yourself to be in a place that's resourced, meaning you feel safe with the door locked in your bedroom, you know, feel the fear. You're not going to die. You're not. You're going to be okay. And I don't know your story, so there's always could be more to it, but the like on the other side of fear is freedom. And once we once we can calm our nervous system and feel the fear to the extent of its life in that
right,
moment, on the other side is peace. And we have to remind ourselves, like, okay, what our body is responding to is actually a trauma or something from the past that is not happening in this moment.
right.
And so we are actually telling our body, you are safe in this moment, and you're safe enough to feel all of um, the locked up fear, the locked up trauma, the locked up whatever that is, that's kind of you're calling fear, um, so that it can get out of our body. It's just locked up feeling.
Mm,
Not just, but yeah, just.
right, or it's unprocessed trauma,
Right, that's
you know?
exactly it. Hmm.
Yeah, it's unprocessed feelings and unprocessed trauma, and again, sometimes we need help. That might mean therapy or
Yes,
working with a body worker who can help you
yes,
unlock your nervous system,
yes,
and especially one that's trauma informed, that knows how to work through trauma. Because I think they're especially when it's really bad, like what we've been
yeah.
through is really serious, that we
Craniosacral
cranial sacral therapy is one of my favorite. Acupuncture sometimes works really well for regulating your hormones and bringing the cortisol levels down, but cranial's my go-to, and other somatic practices like somatic, experiencing and a myofascial release, those kinds of things. There's the combination of myofascial release and cranial is like it's like,
Yeah,
mm, you know,
yep,
unlocking your fascial tissue because unprocessed trauma gets stored in our nervous system and our fascial tissue.
that's right.
And when we can get in there and really release it actually from the body, and I think sometimes we can't think our way out of it. Like your frontal cortex cannot tell your brain stem to calm down, even
That's
though
right.
we try. We're like, hey, calm down back there. It's just doesn't work. Um, and what can work is dealing directly with the body, directly with the nervous system, directly with the tissues in our body that are holding on to those unprocessed things. Then we move out of that.
Yeah, and the unprocessed, that's the alchemy we're talking about. We're alchemizing things that are unprocessed. We're processing them,
Yeah.
you know?
So Willa brings up such a good point here that so actually being safe allows the trauma old sensations to express itself, and I think that's true. Willa, that sometimes we, when we're in that like super like state of nervous system activation, we're just in go mode. We don't always really feel things. When we actually get safe is when we're like, what was that? What happened?
Yeah.
Like then we're like, oh my God, I need to process all that happened. We get a chance to actually work it through when we finally are safe.
And it's, our bodies are designed so brilliantly that when we are actually in a trauma, we actually experience trauma. Our body will store that trauma in, like I always say, I mean, I see energy in vastly different ways for each person. And sometimes it's a black box, and sometimes it's like a wooden box, and sometimes it's like a sponge. It just doesn't, but it's held in our bodies waiting to be like, and until we're in a safe place so that it can be witnessed, so that it can be processed. um, and so that's the blocks that people talk about, is the
Mhm.
old unprocessed trauma that is like
Yeah.
neatly held perfectly so that we can continue on and survive as humans.
Right.
It's really, really a cool process that our body does. So,
And it's so evolutionary, I think it's part
yes.
like, we wouldn't have evolved as humans if, the tiger's chasing you through the jungle and you're
Yeah.
like, "Time out, tiger. I need a little minute here to cry and feel afraid and,
Like
call my
jump.
therapist." Like, no, like, that's no, that's not how that works. Like, you just run until you're
Right.
safe, and then you're like, "Whoa, what happened?"
Yeah.
Um, and we just
Shake it out
have
like the
yeah, we shake it out, we cry, we laugh, we shake to
yes.
reset the nervous system. Anyway, what a great conversation.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you. Thanks,
yeah,
everyone.
thanks all of you guys who showed up and commented. We love that. That's our favorite part of this,
We
doing
do.
these lives, and
Yeah,
it's super you guys brought up some super great topics, so thank you so much. And thank you, Jane, for being here, and we're talking about some alchemy. I love that Denise says, "Oh, alchemy means to process things," and that was a great takeaway from this conversation, so thank you, Denise.
yeah,
And thanks all of you guys for being here, and thank you, Jane, for suggesting this topic. It was cool.
absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.